The morning light spilled through the tall glass windows of the corporate tower, glimmering across polished marble floors. The lobby buzzed with the low hum of voices, heels clicking and phones ringing. New interns hurried through the revolving doors, eager but anxious, trying to make a good impression. Among them sat Emily, a quiet young woman with round glasses and soft brown hair tied into a neat bun. She worked at the reception desk, typing carefully on her computer, her shoulders slightly hunched as though trying to disappear into her seat. She had joined the company just 2 weeks earlier and already felt invisible. The kind of intern no one noticed unless she made a mistake. Her voice was barely above a whisper, and in meetings, her ideas were usually drowned out by louder ones. But despite her shyness, she worked with precision. Her desk always perfectly organized, her notes color-coded, her files alphabetized. That morning was busier than usual. Executives rushed past, preparing for an important investor meeting with someone named Mr. Harris. Emily stayed behind the desk, quietly watching, until the elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. A tall man stepped out, dressed in a navy suit, his posture polite but hesitant. His eyes moved carefully around the lobby as if searching for something. But when Emily greeted him softly, he didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small notepad, and scribbled a few words before sliding it across the desk toward her. The note read, "Good morning. I'm here for a meeting with Mr. Blake at 10 a.m. Below the text, in the corner, was a tiny symbol, a hand forming the sign for thank you. Emily froze, then looked up at him. Suddenly it made sense. The man was deaf. She glanced around for help, but the receptionist had stepped away, and the other interns were nowhere to be seen. She swallowed nervously, her palms damp against the desk. Then slowly she raised her hands and began to sign. Her fingers trembled at first, but her movements soon became fluid. "Good morning," she signed. "You're early. Please wait here for a moment." The man's eyes widened, his face breaking into a look of delighted surprise. His whole posture softened as he signed back. "You know sign language?" Emily nodded quickly, blushing. "A little," she signed back. "My younger brother is deaf. I learned for him." The man smiled warmly, the tension in his shoulders dissolving. They began to converse in silence, their hands moving gracefully in the air. He introduced himself as Mr. Harris, an investor who often found meetings challenging because few people understood how to communicate with him directly. Emily offered him coffee, gestured toward a seat, and chatted about the Daniel Blake had arrived at the office earlier than usual that morning, hoping to prepare for his meeting with Mr. Harris in peace. He preferred silence before negotiations, a few quiet moments to gather his thoughts before the chaos of the day. From his office on the mezzanine, he overlooked the lobby, watching the usual rush unfold below. Assistants scurried with folders, phones buzzed endlessly, and interns darted back and forth with anxious expressions. It was all predictable, mechanical, until his attention was caught by something different. Down at the reception desk, one of the interns, a girl he barely recognized, was communicating with someone through gestures. At first he assumed it was some sort of casual conversation, maybe her explaining directions. But as he looked closer, his expression softened. Her hands moved gracefully, her eyes alive with emotion. It wasn't random motion, it was language. She was signing. And the man she spoke with was smiling, not politely, but genuinely, as if a burden had just lifted off his shoulders. Daniel leaned slightly closer to the glass railing. He recognized the visitor at once, Mr. Harris, one of the company's most important investors. For years, Daniel had been aware that Harris was deaf and preferred to communicate through email or with a hired interpreter. He was a brilliant strategist, known for his precision and patience, but their meetings were always stiff and distant, burdened by the limitations of translation. Yet now there was no barrier. The young intern below, Emily, Daniel recalled after a moment, was speaking to him with a confidence that surprised him. Her movements were expressive, her body language calm, her gestures flowing as though she had been born into that language. Harris laughed silently, and Daniel caught himself smiling too. It wasn't just communication he was watching, it was connection. For a moment he forgot about the reports on his desk, the deadlines, the numbers. What he saw instead was something deeply human. Emily's kindness wasn't calculated or performed, it was instinctive. When Harris accidentally dropped his pen, she knelt to pick it up, returning it with a soft smile. When she noticed he seemed cold, She quietly offered to adjust the air conditioning. Small things, unnoticed gestures, yet they spoke volumes. Daniel stood there for several minutes, watching in silence, feeling something he hadn't in a long time: admiration. He remembered his early days in business, when he too believed compassion and awareness mattered more than image and profit. Somewhere along the way, those values had been buried under boardroom chatter and balance sheets. But watching Emily, he felt something stir. As Harris and Emily continued signing, Daniel realized she was doing more than helping. She was bridging Emily's heart raced as she escorted Mr. Harris toward the elevator. She couldn't stop replaying their silent conversation. In her head, the warmth in his eyes, the way he seemed relieved to be understood without effort. For once she felt seen, not as an invisible intern but as someone capable of doing something meaningful. Still, as the elevator rose, nerves crept in. She wasn't supposed to overstep her role. Maybe the receptionist would scold her for interfering. Maybe the CEO would think she had distracted an important guest. The thought made her palms sweat. When the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, she took a small breath and stepped out, guiding Mr. Harris toward the large glass meeting room. Inside, the air was cooler, quieter, and far more intimidating. The long mahogany table gleamed under bright lights, and the walls were lined with awards and framed photographs of Daniel Blake, shaking hands with powerful people. Emily hesitated at the threshold, unsure if she should enter, but Mr. Harris gestured for her to follow. Before she could say anything, the door opened from the other side, and there stood Daniel himself. He was taller than she expected, his expression unreadable, sharp but calm. Emily froze, her stomach tightening. "Good morning," Daniel said, his tone measured. He extended his hand toward Harris, who smiled politely but did not respond. Then Daniel turned to Emily. "You must be one of our new interns," he said, his eyes studying her face. "Yes, sir," she managed to whisper, clutching her folder. She was about to excuse herself when Daniel did something unexpected. He glanced at Harris, then back at her, and said softly, "Would you mind staying? I believe Mr. Harris could use your assistance." Her breath caught. "My assistance?" she repeated, uncertain. Daniel nodded slightly. "You seem to understand him. Please stay and help interpret." For a moment she was too stunned to speak. Then she looked at Harris, who smiled and signed. "I'd like that." The tension in her chest loosened. She took a seat beside him, folding her hands tightly in her lap. Daniel sat across from them, opening his laptop. "Let's begin," he said. Emily translated carefully, her hands trembling at first but growing steadier with each sign. The rhythm of the conversation formed naturally. Daniel spoke. Emily translated, Harris responded, and she relayed his message back. Soon the room filled not with sound but with motion. Daniel's sharp business tone softened, becoming more deliberate, as he realized how much clearer communication could be when someone took the time to bridge the gap. Emily found herself translating complex financial terms, and the meeting flowed smoother than Daniel could have imagined. What was meant to be a stiff, formal exchange turned into an unexpectedly genuine conversation. Emily translated every sentence with clarity and emotion, ensuring nothing was lost in tone or meaning. Daniel noticed the way she paid attention, not just to words, but to expressions, pauses, the subtle changes in body language. She didn't just interpret, she connected. Mr. Harris spoke about expanding investment in accessibility, technology, explaining how businesses often overlooked people with disabilities as employees and consumers. Emily's hands moved quickly, her expression shifting gently as she translated his points. When Daniel responded, she relayed his words with equal care. There was no rush, no impatience, just understanding. Every now and then, Daniel caught himself watching her more than the conversation. The way she focused, the small frown when she tried to find the perfect sign, the quiet confidence that had replaced her earlier shyness. He could tell she didn't realize how remarkable she was. When the meeting ended, Mr. Harris stood and shook Daniel's hand firmly, smiling with genuine gratitude. Before leaving, he turned to Emily and signed, "Thank you. You made today easier than you know." She blushed, smiling shyly, replying, "It was an honor." After Mr. Harris left, the room fell silent. Emily began gathering her notes, avoiding Daniel's gaze, thinking it was time to slip out quietly, but his voice stopped her. "Emily," he said softly. She froze, turning halfway toward him. You did something extraordinary today, Daniel continued, standing by the table. You reminded me that leadership isn't just about strategy or numbers, and it's about people. She blinked, unsure what to say. I was just helping, she murmured. Exactly, Daniel replied. And that's what most people forget to do. For a long moment, they stood there, the powerful CEO and the quiet intern, united by the simple truth that empathy could change everything. The next afternoon, Emily was sitting at her desk sorting through files when her name appeared in an unexpected email from Human Resources. Her heart skipped. For a moment, she feared she had done something wrong. Maybe she wasn't supposed to stay in that meeting after all. Hands trembling slightly, she opened the message. It read simply, "Please report to the HR office at 2 hours p.m. Mr. Blake's instruction." Her stomach knotted as she made her way upstairs. The HR manager greeted her with an unusually wide smile. "Emily, congratulations," she said. "You've been promoted, effective immediately. You're the new communication coordinator for accessibility and inclusion." Emily stared in disbelief. I don't understand," she stammered. "Mr. Blake personally recommended you," the woman continued. "He was deeply impressed by what you did yesterday. He said you showed this company what real communication means." For a moment, Emily couldn't speak. A rush of emotion rose in her chest. Relief, joy, pride, disbelief. When she finally left the office, she found herself smiling through tears. That evening, as employees filtered out of the building, Daniel passed through the lobby, briefcase in hand. He saw Emily by the reception desk, teaching 2 interns how to sign. "Good morning." They laughed as they mimicked her movements awkwardly. Daniel stopped for a moment, watching. When she noticed him, she straightened quickly, nervous again. But instead of speaking, Daniel raised his hand and signed a single phrase. "Thank you." Emily's face softened. She smiled, returning the gesture with quiet confidence. From that day on, every Friday afternoon, Emily led free sign language sessions for staff, and the once silent halls began to echo with laughter and learning. The company started adding subtitles to videos, hiring interpreters and designing accessible spaces, all because one shy intern chose to use her hands when words failed. And every time Daniel passed her office, he remembered that small, quiet act of kindness that changed not just her life, but the heart of the company itself.